Hello, this is Mrs. Collier. We are going to go over ancient Greece in our social studies book. We're going to cover pages 96 through 99. Just a reminder on how to access the book. You can click on the blue and it will take you to the website. You can click the book with audio so that it will read to you. You have the username and password. I have mine saved so I don't have to enter it every time. And you can use the blue circle in the upper left-hand corner with the white lines to get to the table of contents, and we are going to be going to page 96. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and also remind you that you can pull up the questions at the same time. Just open it with Kami and you have a separate tab, and that way you can go back and forth between the textbook and the questions so that you can answer them easily. So let's start reading. Direct democracy, a big idea. Not only are we influenced by Greek architecture and sports, we also borrowed an important part of the way the ancient Greeks made decisions. About 2,500 years ago, in the city-state of Athens, a great experiment, direct democracy, began. That contribution changed the course of history. Birthplace of democracy. A few times a month, all the interested men who owned property in Athens gathered at a place near the Acropolis, the high hill on which the Parthenon sat, to discuss ways to make Greece a better place. They then voted yes or no with a show of hands as to which ideas would become laws. Direct democracy in action. We have the caption to this sculpture. Says this is a 2,000-year-old sculpture of Pericles, the man who led Athens to a democracy. What can you learn about the people of ancient Greece from this artifact? Well, we know that they felt that democracy was important since they made a sculpture of him. We can also, it reminds us that people have always been the same as far as our way we look physically. And we can kind of see how they're dressed. We know that he was important to them. And we have this really pretty picture. It says, an artist imagines a meeting of citizens in Athens. Do you see the Parthenon? Well, it told us up here the high hill on which the Parthenon sat. So the Parthenon was up on a hill, so this would have been the Parthenon. Let's look at the next page. Words to know, direct democracy, a government in which people vote to make their own rules and laws. And under the heading, Our Rules, Our Laws. The Greeks' direct democracy was not perfect. Only men could vote. Men born outside of Greece, women, and slaves could not vote. But there was an additional problem: space. Can you imagine how difficult it would be for everyone who can vote in America to get together every few weeks in one place to make new laws? And there's no way we could possibly do that because there's just too many people. Greece falls. Ancient Greece was not one big unified country, but rather a group of city-states that often did not get along. There was constant civil wars, which in time weakened the region. The stage was set for another empire to try to seize control. So we talked about the islands and the peninsulas, and that kind of separated them, but they were also separated by being separate groups of city-states. So let's take a look here in the purplish color. It says power to the people. When America broke away from England in 1776, the country was no longer ruled by a king or queen who had inherited power or a ruler who took it by force. America's founders decided to try something new by borrowing something old. So they began by looking to ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy. That word comes from the Greek word "demokratia", which means rule of the people. America's founders liked the idea of government, by the people, for the people. They too wanted a land where the people ruled. That important idea became a starting point for our American way of life. Let's take a look at the caption. Inspired by the Greeks and other great thinkers, our founding leaders built a new nation with democracy as its goal. Thomas Jefferson waits while Ben Franklin and John Adams read his Declaration of Independence. So the United States took the direct democracy from Greece as a starting place for us to have democracy here in the United States. Let's turn to page 98. I'm going to come in close. We have another map. It says Greece is located on a peninsula with mountains and hills. It is surrounded by many islands and the Mediterranean Sea. City-states, and we have Sparta, Athens, and Crete, each had their own unique character. In Athens, democracy flowered. In Sparta, the military ruled. So we talked about on the previous page how they had constant civil war, and they were very separated and they weren't unified, which caused the Civil War. Go ahead and take a look down here. We talked about all of the water that surrounded the different parts of Greece. And we have a picture here, and it's a trireme. It was the most important ship in the Greek fleet and carried over 200 men. The men sat in groups of 3 since it took that many men to handle one of the heavy oars. So we see the oars coming out. How might this great ship have helped the ancient Greeks adapt to their environment? Well, what do you think? They had to travel the water most of the time, so that would enable them to move a lot of people at once and to move a lot of materials too. So I'm sure it was very beneficial. As living in ancient Greece, water everywhere. The geography of ancient Greece had a big impact on the lives of its people. Ships were the lifeblood of the Greeks. Boats were needed for fishing as well as for trading with other Mediterranean port towns. Human resources, shipbuilders and fishermen, needed the seas to survive, and Greek harbors were busy places. So it's telling us there that human resources were the shipbuilders and the fishermen, and that they had to have the sea, which was a natural resource, to survive. Look over here on page 99. We'll start here at the top. Terraced farms. Like the Chinese, Greek farmers learned to cut steps into their hillsides to make terraces. The ancient Greeks had limited farmland because Greece had so many mountains. They gathered rocks and used them to build walls to hold soil, then planted wheat and groves of olives, figs, and grapes. Other farmers raised goats and sheep that scampered with ease over rocky hills. So it is very similar to how the Chinese had used the terraces so that they could grow more crops. That just shows how they didn't let their environment become a stumbling block. They used it so that they could survive. Let's read under Master Farmers. Greece is very hilly and there is not a lot of rainfall, but Greek farmers knew which crops grew well in these conditions. Grapes and olives thrived in the dry climate. Travelers brought lemons from Asia, which soon became a treasured crop. Then we have this picture with the pottery and some people, it looks like they're sliding it into an oven or kiln to dry the pottery. A land of art. Some people worked as artisans, people who made beautiful yet useful things. They made pottery, built temples, and carved statues using Greece's natural resources. Artists were highly respected in ancient Greece. Every town had a marketplace where producers could trade their goods and services. So, for instance, in this picture, the artisans were the producers, the ones making the pottery, and their good was the pottery. Let's read this caption. The artists shown in the painting on the left are decorating jugs for storing oil and wine. These jugs were useful as well as beautiful. What capital resources are they using? So, capital resources, unlike natural resources, are man made. So, they are using the kiln to dry the pottery, and that would have been man made. So, that is one of the capital resources that they are using. Now you can go to your actual worksheet page and type in your answers. We have read all of them as I've read the text and the captions, so if you will carefully take your time, you should have no trouble. Thank you.